But I really want to discuss, most of the questions really come about what happens at each. And the U17 system is really where it starts. I know we say U17, but there are generally U16 and U15 athletes that are admitted to those camps. Um, they're not solely based on hitting a number. I know we see a lot of uh, comments about, oh, this person only has a 710 erg, they got admitted to that camp. That's lame. The ODP camp system is about identifying talent not only that shows interest, but also may play a considerable role in the junior system in future years. So we're trying the ODP system. If imagine the pyramid, right? The base of the pyramid is trying to make sure that we're involving as many athletes as we can, getting coached, getting the right coaching, getting the right education, increasing their rowing IQ, making sure that they are ready to take the next steps if they are willing and able. It isn't about if there's a U15, U16 athlete that is say a female athlete going 648, well, ODP is probably not the place that they're going to be if they're looking to go to world championships, if that's their goal. So it's not just about your erg, it's not about your fitness, it's about what we're looking for as an athlete, making sure that your preparation is right to your age. So if you are a very young athlete and you don't have the skills developed to be competitive yet, that's what you should be looking for at the ODP camps. If you are looking for physical fitness, training plan is there also to help you do that. Maybe you have some skills, but you don't have the fitness yet, right? That's the process, or part of the process at ODP. It isn't, you are the next Olympian. If you're that, then you're probably going to be pushed up to selection camp pretty quickly. The U18 portion of ODP, the HP, U18, U19, we'll say U20 and U21 are again more of that in that line of not quite being ready for the next step, so that there's a little smaller groups, a little more a better ratio of what people would say, a better ratio of coach to athlete about development than selection camp. Selection camp is going to have, well, I'll get to that in a second, but at this ODP, HP for the older athletes, it is about being involved. Maybe you're a different sport athlete, you're moving over to rowing, you don't quite have the skills, but you have the fitness. This is a place to develop those skills, to learn the language, to hear what we're looking for again, not just us, the junior coaches, but the U23 coaches and then the senior national team coaches. So that pipeline, that should be thought of as, how do I get the tools necessary and build or order the correct building blocks so that I can move forward in the system. There small boat training at all the ODP camps, small boats, and I say small boats, pairs, singles, doubles. There are quads. The older athlete ODP, HP will be in more and more small boats or blind boats, like straight fours, quads, and doubles, pairs. And then once you go above that, right, I'll say that the next step, not for the ODP, HP older athletes, but for the younger athletes, the next steps are selection camp, which are made up in this what I'm showing here, what are made up in selection development camp, U18, Canamex camp, which is also U18, and then the under 19 national team, which is the world's team. So how we do that is we invite everybody that is meeting. If you check the check boxes of physicality, like erg standards, rowing, submit the videos, you're rowing well, your coach recommendations, no matter what, if you're seeing or hitting all those check boxes or marking all the check boxes, you'll be invited to selection camp. And now if you get to selection camp and you're young and you haven't really developed the skills necessary to go to Worlds, you have these other options, selection development and Canamex. So you can get a little bit higher competitive racing experience and also experience what the coaches are looking for at the Worlds level. You will participate in all of the selection procedures, right? Leading up through the identification and selection part of selection camp. And that is, that's a whole entirely mixed group for at least the first week, where we are going out and working on skills. The disparity of skill at selection camp is great. So it is a learning process the first few days into the week, where it is rowing by pairs, 4s and 6s and 8s, or straight 4s, whatever boat you're in. It's a development and skill awareness part of camp. There is some working out, but it is mainly just general fitness while you are learning how to row in a similar manner, so that boats can be evaluated, or lineups or people can be evaluated on a similar platform. So all of the athletes at selection camp, no matter the age, will participate in that process. And then once selection starts, it'll generally happen pretty quickly. If you aren't paying attention, right, at the beginning of every day, the coaches are telling you what's happening, what's going on that day, how it's going to happen, if you have any questions, and then they'll review the day. And sometimes you will see that people are not used to that environment because of their home club environment is a little bit different. And they'll say, wow, that really came at me quick. I wasn't really sure what just happened. Even though we're trying to communicate every day, be as clear as we can be about how things are going to happen and what's going to happen. So it's very important that the athletes come in with a fairly open mindset, and an understanding of we have, like, this year is a little exaggerated. We have 5 weeks to prepare it, identify, select, and prepare boats for a world championship. So it's going to happen very quickly. And what I would say, something that does get missed, is we have an FAQ, and it shows we have erg evaluations. We don't do a 2K at selection camp. We feel that you'll do enough 2Ks at your home program, and you have the opportunity to do it in the confines of your own program, where you can feel comfortable, and it's not just a one-day event that, anxiety can play a role. There's some things. So we have decided that we don't do 2Ks at selection camp. We do an evaluation of athletes over a 3-day period that more closely represents the workload that you would do at the World Championships, so we can see how you will react in that environment. And that is 6x500, 3x750, and 2x1250 on consecutive days. And then that will help us, re-identify, gives you a chance to get back into, maybe we overlooked an athlete and we should try to see where they fit in based on that physicality. There is a question, what is the deadline for letters of recommendation for coxswains to be considered for the U19 selection camp? Our selection or identification process and invite process will go until the day of nationals, the final day of youth national championships. I'm not saying that that's when you want to wait. The earlier you get them, the better. The earlier you submit them, the better. They have more time to review, more time to compare. It helps us identify coxswains, the audio recordings, and some of the coxswains were making audio over videos they found on YouTube last year. I mean, it was a COVID consideration, but getting those in as early as possible is great, but there is no current deadline other than youth nationals, the final day. And again, our invite process goes out in waves. Again, this is an FAQ, so I'm just going to say something that is written, but so we send out waves of invites. We start with the first wave, and that includes people that went to Worlds first. We've sent those out. We've got a lot of those back. Second wave went out, and those people are starting to come in. It just went out. They are coming in and registering for next year's selection camp. And then the people that were at ODP in that group, and then those will get their invites as being part of the system. And this is part of why it's good to be in the system, because we know the athletes a lot better. We know them well. We know how they responded to us in prior years. And that's where they'll get the invites. And then ID camp, which our first one starts January 23rd, and they will run through the spring. Those are on the website as well. I think I have that here. Let me share that on the screen. I don't know if this helps since we're sitting here, but anyway, this is on US Rowing page. The ID camps are listed, right? The coaches that are going to be there, the dates, some of them, they'll be updated. You can see the TBA. We just found out today that the Washington, D.C. one will be at the Anacostia Boathouse. That will be updated later as US Rowing updates those things, that information. So you can definitely get on the website. It's got a lot of information. I was told that it's pretty thorough, which is good. But there's always going to be questions no matter how well we think we're preparing the information. Where should we send letters of recommendation? We are using the profile on GMTM system. Those letters of recommendation, if there isn't a file or a way to submit it on GMTM currently, I'm going to make a note of that and have the person that updates that for us add that field. And I don't know, honestly, I can't give you an answer. If you're already a member of GMTM, I can't give you an answer if we can blast something out that says there's a new field or not, and I will find that out. And if we can blast it out, we'll send out a notification. If we can't, I would just say one of the things we'll do is put it on the website, and then if you check your account and you see that you can update it, that would be a good thing to do. Where can we find coaches' emails for recordings? Eric, Caitlin, and Ellen, if you could have it. Ellen's is at the top of this chat, by the way, for para. Eric and Caitlin, if you put yours in, they already have. Women's lead coach selection, those are the emails. And you already said thank you. I'm way behind here. Yes, it is. It still will be at Benderson, the Sarasota ID camp. We will send out a schedule of how it's going to happen. It will be happening on Sunday. The reason we are able to do it is because you will not be executing, I'll give you a little insight, not executing a 2K this year for identification camps. So it won't be the same on-land process. We will be executing a warm-up and then a shorter pieces. And then, based on, we're going to allow people, will be sent out, but we're going to allow people to schedule when they come in around their racing. And then after the racing is over on Sunday, we'll be going out on the water. So that's what I can give you on that information right now, or that event right now. Let's see if Ellen is here yet, but does anybody have any further questions about the things I've gone over? You can raise your hand also if you want me to see, you don't want to type it and you want to say it if it's a long question. But not really, no questions. Great, this is pretty easy. We're done, we're out. No, I'm just kidding, I'm kidding. But so selection camp, I'll go over selection a little. Oh, well, actually, I'll go back to ODP. With the building block development, you will execute what is called the Summer Cup racing at the end of it, where the regions will race against each other, and you'll race in, different event boat classes. It's a pretty big mix, of fun time to race and get to try to execute the things that you've learned. I think one of the coaches said the coolest event at Summer Cup was the novice sculling event, the novice single, to see which athletes picked up the skill and to see the development of an athlete over that time period in that environment was pretty cool. Question, does the date of the ID camps impact the date of potential invitation? Yes. So after ID camps, you will receive, we'll send out another wave of invites, and that will be based on your performance at those ID camps, but it won't all be one wave. So that fourth ID camp wave will have its own waves, right? We'll have invites for after the January, February, or some of the February ID camps have happened. There will be a group of invites that go out. Then February and March, there will be a group of invites that go out. March and on. So it's an ongoing process. It isn't something you should say, oh, I didn't get an invite by February, I must not be doing anything. We're going to try to get you the information as quickly as possible for you to submit so that you and your family know what you're going to be doing this summer. We don't want you to be waiting around wondering if you're going to camp. So we're trying to get that settled as quickly as possible. Let's see. I went to the U.S. rowing website, and when I used the ODP registration link, it said the web page cannot be found. Where else can I find the application? So ODP, if you look down at the bottom of the website, it says 2021 Olympic Development Program, 2022 ODP camp information will be posted as soon as it's available, which it is not. So that's why you're getting that link. They are reworking the website so that all of the information will be correct and current, instead of putting, the little things up. And most of that comes with, on our side, with planning, that we are, getting finalization of which dining hall we're going to be in. So we're trying to make sure that all of that information is released and you have enough time to review it instead of just being thrust upon you. So I would say go back to the website and keep checking in. And the date that I was told is that we would have a general release of things in the later January. So keep looking and stay active. Let's see here. When is the latest that someone can send updated scores, be invited to selection? We do have a limited number of seats at selection camp. I will say that. So, if we are full, then sending an invite for selection camp will probably not happen unless there's some major change. We will force a coach off of campus to make room. So that is, understand that we're not going to just say, okay, well, we have 100 beds, so we're going to limit it to 100. Last year we had a limited number of beds, and we made accommodations for other coaches off campus so that we could have more athletes on campus. So if there is a major improvement and we see that you are going to play a role, right, I would say our priority is going to be, at that point, will you, we don't want to just take your money. I know that's a big, everybody thinks it's a moneymaker, but believe me, it's not. So we don't want to say, oh, last second, oh, you kind of make the cutoff, you really have the numbers around a person that would be at selection development. Do we really want to say, hurry up, come out here, pay this money, you're really not going to have a chance for, no, I'm not going to predetermine your chance, but based on our history, if you are a boy or a male rower and you are going 7 minutes on your 2K, then we're not going to bring you out there just to have you not trial and make the world team. So like, understand that we're trying to put you in the right place. If you're in those numbers, then we're going to probably invite you to an ODP camp so that you can have some skill and maybe even learn some simple things like nutrition and training, proper training. I got another question. Explain the HP athletes between selection and ODP. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. So if you have that question again, could you please fill out a little more detail? Let's see here. Lots of questions coming in. When will the dates be released for the ODP programs? Those dates are going to come out on the website for sure. I know I can tell you this, that the women's ODP will be starting on June 13th. And I know the men's, or the men was discussed, or were discussed starting the following week. So I don't want to speak to the men's side because I don't have all their details. I know the women's side is going to be in Sarasota, and that it's going to be on the 13th, that Monday following Youth Nationals. What steps do we recommend to take the first year coxswain to the U.S. rowing program? Really, the steps for that, there's, again, try not to limit people in their abilities or create some kind of glass ceiling and saying, oh, it's your first year, you can only do these things. But making sure that you have recordings, very important, practice and racing if it's possible. If it's, I alluded to this earlier, if racing is not possible, say you're in the Northeast and you're frozen in for a very long time, there are plenty of examples on YouTube where athletes have made their recordings over other races. So that was an exciting solution that people came up with, and actually pretty brilliant. So I think that, that if you're new and you can't get on the water, right? So, we're not frozen down here, so it's a little bit of a different story. But if you can get a video of a race and then produce your own race recording over it, that would be awesome. That would be I would get recordings, I would submit the recordings, I would update your account on GMTM, I would notify the coaches, I would ask some questions to some respected coxswains. Usually, I know Chris Chase had a coxswain clinic one summer, or actually during COVID. I wonder if Chris could speak to that, maybe where that is posted, because some of those coxswains have terrific insight that they can pass on, and it could help you develop a little bit and see what you're missing and ask some questions directly. But asking questions, getting some video, getting review or audio, and getting review of that audio, which the coaches are willing to do too if you're submitting it. What the step that puts us in, though, is we don't always want to see or hear the same thing your home club wants to see or hear. So that will be part of the conversation when we're talking to you or reviewing an audio file or a video file with you. That please understand that we're looking for certain things. Your home club may be looking for something different, and we're not trying to step on toes. Where are the ODP men and HP men's camps going to be this summer? So ODP men will be in Chattanooga. The HP men will be, or ODP HP will be in Jacksonville, and the coaches have not been released yet. So that will be something that comes out a little later. The lead coach, once that camp is settled, staffing is settled. All ODP, nope. The females will be in Sarasota. Males for ODP will be in Chattanooga. ODP HP will be in Jacksonville. They're in the high performance camps. The HP ODP, there will be 26 males and 26 females. That will be the limit for those as well. So it's a great place for development. Let's see here. Does the invite selection process depend heavier on ID camps or submitted scores? It's always great to be able to get eyes on. Just remember, like last year, we selected based on videos and information we already had. So, or we identified and invited, not selected, sorry, those athletes. So is it heavier, one or the other? As I spoke before, if you check all the check boxes, it's hard for us not to invite you. So if you have female sub, I'm going to make numbers up that sound ridiculous. If you go sub 650 for a female and you're sub 550 for a male, and you meet all the other requirements, age and all that, you're going to get an invite. But if your skill set doesn't match, it's going to be a disappointing summer. So you have to weigh how that process is, right? We're not putting boats together based on your awesome 2K on paper or whatever gets submitted. So ID camps, we will be doing another procedure, a different procedure this year, not 2Ks. We had been doing 2Ks that were modified 2Ks or rate cap 2Ks because we wanted to have a standard to look at across the country. We decided we didn't want to burden all of the athletes with another 2K, which you will probably do. Most people do in America, 2Ks. So we wanted to collect different data this year at ID camps. So we have finalized that procedure, and it will be published soon when US Run will update the website. I think they can do it tomorrow or the next day. But we will be doing a 1 minute max watts test and also a 3x10 second max watts. And that will be what will be executed at ID camp and rowing. So where it can be done, rowing will be done at those ID camps. So what weighs heavier? Always like to have eyes on, but we won't put you in a financial burden to go to an ID camp or make you skip school or make you do anything to get an invite. We really appreciate the help of your coach to give us some insight, communication. And also, you can submit videos and submit your scores on your GMTM account. So it really isn't, I don't know, I wouldn't say it weighs heavier one way or the other, because again, we're not going to force you to go to an ID camp. And yes, you can still get selected or identified and invited, sorry. What happens, what are the things that you do to evaluate erg piece on the water at the one-day ID camp? So I just went over that. And then it's just really about on the water. If you can get on the water, is about skill development. Those ones that you can't get on the water, there will be a little more erg work, like going over technique, discussion of what the camp is like. But the erg pieces are those that I discussed. They'll be posted again and updated. It's not like they're going to be a secret. And on the water, it just depends on skill set. There's always ID camps are for everyone. There are athletes that are looking to get involved in the system. There have been 12-year-olds, and there are in great years where we have great representation. We have people that went to Worlds and got medals. So it gives us an opportunity, not just the ID camps, but we also do winter HP camps, which we're not doing again this year. But it gives us an opportunity to see the rowers and get eyes on. It gives us an advantage to, especially a season or a summer like we're about to have, where it's 5 weeks. if we can spend, 2 weekends a year prior to the summer, seeing how people work together, it helps us identify and kind of get a base for maybe some combinations or whatnot over the summer. So that's why we do the ID camps and winter HP camps. We're really trying to get eyes on and make sure we're not caught behind the the 8 ball in the summer. Can you still get an invitation if you don't go to an OD camp? Absolutely. Or ODP camp? Absolutely. Plenty of athletes do. It just helps a lot. We were talking last summer, the coaches at selection camp, how we had so many people had been through our system, even if it were before it was called ODP, it was just U17. And how many people had been through the system and we known them and had eyes on them from when they were in 8th grade or 9th grade. So it does help. And you're hearing what the coaches, what we want. You're hearing the language, you're getting a little bit of review, you're being told what we're looking for and understanding of the stroke. So it makes it a little easier when you do come up to selection camp. In what order are invites being sent to athletes for selection and how many athletes per program? So I went over that earlier. We send it in waves, worlds athletes, then selection development, Canamex athletes, ODP athletes, then ID camp. How many athletes per program? If you're saying HP camp, that's 26 per gender. ID camps, there's no limits. ODP, there are limits. We usually go between 22 and 24 per gender per region. But again, what we do in those is if we get more athletes, we keep an coach to athlete ratio. If we have extreme interest of people that are doing, we're not going to turn people away because we create some false limit. We'll hire more coaches. So are the ODP camps 3 days, 4 days, 5 days? ODP camps are 4 weeks total. They are 3 weeks of development and then a little over 3 weeks of development and training and practicing and education. And then there's a racing aspect at the end. Are HP rowers from last year automatically considered, and when do HP athletes from last year begin to get their invites? If you mean HP as in ODP HP, last year we had different age groups, so that's a little tricky question. If you mean HP, sorry, we changed some language, HP to selection development, so that's a little confusing. If you could clarify that for me so I don't speak wrong to that answer, that'd be great. 2K times there's a question about 2K times range for women. Selection camp, people that have gone to worlds and won medals have been, I hate to use the word slow, their execution of a 2K has been in the mid 720s all the way to sub 650. So there's a large range. We do your erg. That's where, if you are in the good thing is, this is the best thing about how we do selection camp, is that our selection camp, it spans what we think will go to worlds, what we think we're going to develop is ready to develop now, Canamex, and what we believe will be ready in another year or two at selection development. So there usually is an incredible spectrum of ergs because all of those categories have different standards. The reason why we bring everybody together is because we all know that ergs don't float. So if you have a selection development level erg and you get to camp and you are an unbelievably efficient rower and you're an amazing racer, well, that's identified and then you have the opportunities, right? So there is that, it's hard to say because there are people, even on the boys side, there one year, I think the most successful year in the history of the US program for the men's straight 4, it was a 4th place result in 2016. a boy had a 6:39 2K. So, his coach called, said, look, you got to really look at this athlete. He was sculling, I believe, all summer or all year. He jumped into the sweep group. We had sculling and sweep together. It's another reason we do it. And he jumped in the straight four, and that straight four just started flying. And that's not something we would say. We really cherish the moment to identify and select somebody with a 6:39 2K, knowing that all of the competition at Worlds is going to be, Germany that won, they're having 6:09s, right? You're just putting yourself in a physical deficiency. So we're not saying there's a limit, like you can't make a boat, but typically physicality and skill go together for gold medals. And Chris just texted and said one of the gentlemen that was in the Cox 4 in 2018 won a silver medal with a 6:39 also. So I know you were asking for the females, but again, that's, it's just an example. I've worked with the boys a little longer, so I have a little more of the details, but there just isn't a standard. And that's why like our identification process during the summer is so good, because those athletes that are capable of moving boats and working within the environment of those different classes of boats and the skills required make themselves known, and they're identified, so they get the opportunity. It's not just a erg camp or a seat racing camp. So will the women's ODP be in Sarasota for the entire month, or will college campus? Nope, it'll be in Sarasota. It'll be in the Homewood Suites adjacent to the park, so they'll be right there. Essentially the whole hotel will be for those athletes, and they'll be right there at Nathan Benderson Park. If you register for the ID camp, will you receive a confirmation emailing your participation or not ready yet status? When will the athlete receive? If you registered through Regatta Central, you should have received a confirmation that you are registered. And then Chris posted the links for the virtual coxswain camp right in this chat. So if you're a coxswain and you're asking, that's a good way to get a little good information.
Yeah, let me know if you can't get in there, and I'll be happy to open it for you.
Yeah, thanks. And Eric Gerke responded with the ID camp confirmation, which he said, thank you. No, so what the question is, if you attended ODP, what's the next step? That's one of the hardest things really to define about this process. Is there are steps, like we want to give that visualization, really, like you want to see the progress, this step, this part of the pyramid, however it is, but everybody develops at different levels. And the thing we don't want to do is say, like, this is something when I came onto the system that was there that we've always tried to answer. And it is, you are like an athlete may be somebody that we see is going to play a role on the senior national team. But right now, there were tons of athletes that made the boats go faster, and they were more competitive at that moment, that summer. And we're not going to select somebody to the junior team that will make the senior national team. That's not the purpose of the junior team. The junior team is to give those athletes that have the ability to compete at the best right now their time to shine. This may be the time. You may never pick up an oar again after the summer. That isn't my concern. My concern is that while you are interested in competing for the US, you are given the proper opportunity. That's it. So that example for ODP, say there's a 15-year-old female that just got into rowing last year. They're at ODP. All of a sudden, they're now pulling a 7:08. They grew 10 inches. Now they're 6'2". Maybe ODP, maybe you develop and you're not at ODP HP, you are going to be invited to selection camp. There are also, if you do get an invite to ODP, that doesn't mean that you won't be asked to then transfer to selection camp, right? So once you're in the system, we don't say like, oh, we sent that person an ODP invite. They're destined to only have that opportunity, right? We brought selection camp together and we kept it at selection camp so we could keep focuses. But we used to have that problem all the time. We would have selection development, which used to be called HP, and Canamex camp at another location, and we only had the world's selection group at another location. And every year we had to say, okay, Canamex, HP, selection development, who are your top athletes? Let's get them on a plane. Let's fly them out to our selection camp and see if they can displace any of these people we invited to our world selection camp. And it created so many problems. It was a financial burden to everybody involved. It increased costs. So we did away with that and said, we're going to invite everybody to the same location. But if we make a mistake on identification, you might be at ODP and the coaches will say, this person really needs to be at selection camp. Then we're going to call the parents, say, hey, is it okay if your athlete flies out to selection camp and goes to selection camp? We're going to have that conversation. It's not going to be an end of the road, but there are those steps and nobody should feel left out or bad that they go ODP, HP. When it's your time, it's your time, and everybody develops at different speeds. So we're not trying to force a pathway down somebody's throat. There are clearly other options, and we are not trying to say that you can only go this step to this step. There are people that skip them all, right? There have been some, Liz Tron years ago had a 15-year-old, I think, that started rowing that one year. She went into the straight four and won a gold medal. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stories, athletes from different sports. So there isn't like a specific path. It's just all of those paths or parts of the path are available. I hope that answers your question. And again, one of the things that last year, 4 of the men at the Olympics were athletes that were cut from the junior national. So, they just weren't there, or there was a large group of athletes that were a little bit more ready than them at the time. And then they either developed and went faster, or all of those people quit. One or the other, I don't know. I'm just trying to make a silly joke. So let me get back to question. Blah, blah, blah. ODP athletes from last year automatically considered for selection camp. And when do they, again, that's an age question. So that's where the complexity in this comes in. If you are an ODP HP, last year we had these considerations because of COVID that a whole year of selection camp and Canamex and selection development didn't get the coaching from the US team. So we made some exceptions. So again, I'm sorry that I'm not giving you a non-answer to your question. But if they were at ODP HP and they are going to meet some criteria for selection camp and they're age eligible for selection camp, they will be on the list for invites. If they don't meet selection camp criteria, then they will not be. And I say that, I'm not trying to be coy. The selection camp piece when you were 18 years old is about representing the country at world championships. So there is a standard that we're looking for. If your athlete does not meet those standards that are laid out the FAQ and on the website, you can always communicate with the coaches recommendations, right? Race results are very important. If you're rowing well, those things are very important. And other ways to get invites if you're not meeting, say, erg standards that are suggested on the website. Selection camp and the U19 time trials dates overlap. If you get an invite to selection camp, do you need to choose one? Absolutely not. The not time trials, but world's trials for the singles, the doubles, and the pair for the juniors will be on Tuesday after youth nationals. You have the opportunity to go there. Those people that do not win worlds can also be invited to camp from that if they haven't received an invite up to that point. So, excuse me, we're definitely trying not to create limitations. Timelines are a big thing, right? Worlds happens 2 weeks prior to what it would have. It happens most years, so there's a shorter time frame, and we're trying to make sure that we are getting everybody that wants to go to selection camp, so the trials is a little earlier. So no, you do not have to choose. Last year, the men's pair and the women's single also, after they won trials, this is not going into selection camp, but after they won trials, they came out to Chula Vista to train so that they could train with the team. So that's an opportunity as well. So not only if you don't win trials, can you get an invite? If you do win trials, the an opportunity to come out and train with the team is also there out in Chula Vista. And 2 Olympians from Central Catholic. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. That was great, Grady and Alex. But they both made the junior national team, so that's a little unfair and not to the point I was making. They were on the national team several years, junior national team several years, as a matter of fact. If you get an invite to selection camp, should you still consider to go to an ID? I think it's great. We had, in some of our best years of identification, we had our previous world champion rowers go and medalists go to their ID camps, and it really just helps. It helps the younger group, right? The older athletes start to take some ownership in the process and take some pride in it and want to see it continue. It's super helpful if it's not a financial burden. I'm not saying do that for the team. It just is. It was really awesome. Honestly, some of the kids, and Chris can speak to this more than I can because this is a conversation he had, but some of the athletes that were at ID camp in Orlando, Clark Dean isn't from the Southeast, so he went to the ID camp after he won Worlds. There's no reason for him to go, but he went because he wanted to help the program. And it was really awesome to see. And it was really great to see that 12 and 13-year-olds, they were asking for his autograph and stuff. It was pretty cool. And it just creates this energy, and it's great to be there. And then he went out and rode with other people from the ID camp, and we were able to see, okay, well, how do these people mix in? Again, like I spoke earlier, to the base of the program, and do we want to put these two people in a boat together in a, could we, when we show up at camp, do we kind of put these two together and see who fills around them, so that we do a 4, or do we put them in the quad, or what is it? So those going to ID camp is a good thing for many reasons, but seeing that, letting the younger athletes see the older athletes is one positive for us. One positive for the athlete and the coaches is that if you are going to get to row, we get to see you row, and we can start to see, like, hey, when you get to camp, have those communications. Like, when you get to camp, you need to think about doing these changes or making these changes, or also, being ready to hear this language, or being flexible and making that change and not being so stringent on, say, that style or whatever it is for the summer. All right. So again, like I said earlier, we're not trying to, step on anybody's toes. The only reason we're successful at the junior team is because of the clubs and schools back home. And we just need people to understand when they get to camp, they're going to be asked to row like whoever's in stroke seat, to set that rhythm in whatever program they come from. If they come from, I don't know, somewhere, I don't even want to make up a name, but they come from somewhere, they row a certain way. that rhythm is gonna transfer into the whole boat, and we're not gonna try to change it because we don't have that much time to change somebody's style or technique. You just are gonna have to be able to flow with it. And if you can't flow, then you may be the strongest, greatest rower at your home club, but if you can't fit with the rest of the people in the national team, then you're not gonna make a boat. So that's important to understand. And going to ID camps just lets us reinforce that. So I asked Ellen to be here, be ready to talk at 8, and then I asked her a bunch of questions and talked too much. Ellen, if you are ready to speak in more detail about the para, because you are the person to have that, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Casey and Chris, for putting this on. I've been really excited to be in this collaboration with Chris and Casey to create a similar pathway for athletes with disabilities to make our Paralympic team. And one thing I think most people don't really know is that some of our most successful Paralympic athletes have come from top high school programs. So Zach Burns from Skyline High School, Ricky Vandergriff from Cincinnati Juniors, John Tangway most recently this year came from the Mercer junior program. So specifically regarding the PR3 athletes, they are competing at very high levels in our junior programs, and we want to create similar pathways to identify them and create those opportunities so that when they come out for a Paralympic team, they'll be ready. So briefly about the PR3, it's a word that just means they're eligible for the PR3 event, which is basically sliding seat, typical of any junior program, but athletes in this category have a visual impairment, for example, or a restricted ankle movement, such as a club foot, fused ankle, what have you, and some other disabilities. We also are looking to develop coxswains, and there is no disability requirement there. So when we think about opportunities to be a coxswain on a senior national team, that's another opportunity there that we're looking for athletes with strong experience. So in that category, we have seen athletes emerge from our junior system and make the Paralympic team, which is amazing. We had an athlete with a visual impairment participate in the ODP camp last year, Sarah Menifee, and she's now rowing in college. So that's one aspect of what we want to do, but we also want to make sure that athletes who are seated or use a fixed seat have opportunity to develop appropriately through the ODP or para and ODP program. So what we'll be thinking about for that, because our athlete pool is a little bit smaller right now, as we grow the program, we will not be hosting specific ID camps. We will be looking more closely at the applications as they come in and assessing where an athlete belongs most appropriate, either at the HP camps together or possibly ODP camp. And that would depend on the application as it comes in, which is based on ERG score, age, years in the sport, and some very baseline parameters. So we use a Google form that is on the, if you go to usrowing.org under national team, para-national team, there are 2 forms. One is called our baseline metrics, which is we just want height, weight, wingspan, and a few other characteristics there, nothing to do with ERG. And then there is a separate form, which is national team results, and that single form will take anything from a max watts test, a various different ergometer testing, but also if you don't have a lot of erg experience but you've been on the water, is also the same form is used to submit any on water result. So we'll use those forms as a way to evaluate and appropriately place people. And as Casey was mentioning, for the open side, the athletes without disabilities, we're going to look at a case-by-case basis, and we'll place people where they belong. And these are sort of on competitive standards, as would be for any of the levels of the camp. So yes, we have ERG standards that we're trying to get to. We are trying to get all of our events to the podium at the Paralympic Games in 2024 and 2028. And we know a certain ERG standard is going to get there. But again, like Casey mentioned, we want to take an athlete where they are and make some assessment about where they might be and might contribute to future teams. So that's just something that we're working on. You'll see more and more language about the youth para, U19, U20, U21 programs as part of the website that we're putting together for the junior programs. And it's really evolving, but I'm really excited because I know that the future of our 2028 Paralympic team, when the games come back to the US, our best hope is for our junior athletes right now and where we want to develop them. So I'm really excited about it. I did see a question pop in. I'm just going to take that one question quickly. The coxswain need not have any impairment at all. So the athlete who comes in as a coxswain, if they have a disability and they're a great coxswain, that's fine. If they don't have a disability, that's also fine. So the Cox 4 is the event for the PR3, but they are also new to our program is the PR3 double, which is a bit of a higher level impairment. PR3 double just means a standard double, like anybody who's on this call would be familiar with a sculling double. But this disability is more likely to be somebody with complete blindness would make an eligible impairment for this, or an amputation of a foot or lower limb, something like that. So a little more pronounced impairment that would be obvious. But these are the athletes we want to find and identify. These are the athletes we want to have appropriate, fun, positive, competitive experiences for, so that by the time they come out for a national team in a few years, they will have the full complement of experience that the ODP program and the high performance program have done for so many rowers over the last few years. I can probably drop some of those forms. I see a couple of people commenting in the chat. If you go to the two forms that I mentioned, that's the easiest way. Like, I've identified a number of athletes who just have never even been on the water, but they've heard about my baseline metrics form. And it's basically seated height, wingspan, how many push-ups you can do, how many inverted rows you can do, your age, and kind of where you are. And that is a big indicator of where you might be in our pathway, which is evolving as we go, but it's been a huge help for us already. We've identified not only juniors, but some U23 and older athletes who may have potential in our system just by the nature of some of those characteristics that they're submitting. So that's how we're going to evaluate the applications on the para part of things. We'll be working very closely with Casey and Chris Chase to make sure that there'll be appropriate equipment and coaching in place there. But for all intents and purposes, rowing is rowing. We want the athlete with disability who has a Paralympic eligibility to have all of those same skill sets and developmental opportunities that the ODP program can bring. And we're going to work very closely to make sure everyone has a really positive experience. And if anyone has any questions, I think my email was in the chat. And happy to talk to anyone. We also have a newsletter that goes out quarterly, first time ever we've had that. It will go out next week. If you want to subscribe to that, just let me know. I'll add your email, but it'll have this information with a little bit more detail about some of the other senior level opportunities that we have for athletes with disabilities. I don't have too much else unless okay, gotcha. Rowers Reach, you're on there. Got it. Yeah, like I said, feel free to shoot me an email offline. We've got some good systems in place. I've been can actually at this point in time can help provide some technical expertise to some of your programs, whether it be equipment setups or even training programs for athletes with disabilities. You know, but we are also looking for people who are at an appropriate competitive level. We understand that this is a new venture for para rowing. We want to help you get there as best we can. And we've got a few good resources to assist coaches and athletes to kind of get there. So I'm really excited about it. But that's kind of all I have for tonight, Casey or Chris, unless I'm leaving anything out, anything I missed.
I don't think so. You covered it very well. And, you know, it was, well, I thought you did anyway. So I think you put it very well, you know, making sure that the athletes are placed with their skills, you know, make sure they're in the right place. And I think that's very important, and a very succinct way to put it across the whole spectrum. So I'm glad you said that. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Outside of that, I think that's it. I don't see any more questions, and I'm going to keep Chris Chase muted so he can't talk at all. And then we'll get out of here. If anybody has any questions, feel free. The contacts are on the web. The coaches put their information also in the chat. This is recorded. It will be posted. If you're not getting an answer from one of the coaches or the contacts that have already been provided, all the documentation that I shared on my screen today has both my direct email and Chris Chase's email. So feel free to communicate or copy us on any of those communications. I don't think there has been a problem. I just don't want there to be a problem. We don't want anybody to be missed or overlooked or fall in the cracks. A quick question was, will ID Camp be sweep only? We've had both groups at ID Camp before, and we've taken quads out, we've taken doubles. People have brought their singles to ID camps to ask questions, to be, you know, what should I change, what, you know, to get ready for selection camp or trials for that matter. So utilizing those camps, just what I would say is communicate with the lead coaches so that they can be, if you were going to bring your single to ID camp, make sure that they're aware so that they can be prepared to manage that effectively. But it can be for both. Our selection camp is all of those boats, all the selection boats together. We do select, you know, we have people identify upon arrival what they row. They can choose if they scull and they don't want to be in a sculling boat. They can try to hide their skill and not announce that they scull. But what we will do is, if their best opportunity is to be in the quad, then they will find themselves in that sculling group. When you come to selection camp, you are being identified to be in the boat that you move best and have the best opportunity in. Having that kind of flexibility is very important. But when you get there, you identify, I am a sculler and I can row both sides, but I prefer starboard. And then we utilize that information. We create a sheet so we can create lineups that offer people those opportunities to be identified on both. Identify both of those skills or give you more opportunities. If you scull, you will have considerable amount of greater opportunity to make any boat than somebody who says, I only row port, right? So you are increasing your opportunities if you row both sides, right? In preparation for camp, maybe that's a discussion you have with your coach. At home, have that opportunity. If you scull, that is an even greater opportunity. The quad gets selected first just because it's a more matter of fact. If you scull, you get put in the sculling group. That happens pretty quick. Then, you know, if you don't make a sculling boat, you get moved into the sweep group, have that opportunity, and then you can be identified there. You know, so those things are very good. And you have, again, you can say, I don't scull. Like, we've had some kids from my own home program who don't identify themselves as a sculler when they get there, but they are utilized in the sculling group for days to make sure that we are rounding out lineups for fair evaluation. So, you know, you want to be positive and open when you get there to camp. So, how can I find the best summer program for my athlete? Can you provide a contact? I came late, daughter rowing at practice, so I can't see the chat. Blah blah blah. Oh, yep. You can get on the website. It's the best thing to do for summer camps. If you're talking about U.S. rowing and ODP, I'm sure there are other avenues to find other kind of rowing camps. But you can email the contact information on the under 19 national team general overview document. Casey, let's see, let me go ahead and put it in here. I think I spelled it all right. If you have any questions about camp, I can further be assistance to you there. What date will U.S. trials be? It is the Tuesday following Youth Nationals. I think Youth Nationals is over on the 12th. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Let me just look at the calendar here.
Casey, I put it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Yeah,
Tuesday the 14th, with the makeup day is Wednesday.
Chris, can you post where they can see this recording? That was a question. Ellen posted the link. Junior trials, you did. Are there more updates coming pertaining to open water rowing? That will be part of Chris. You'd have to speak if the curriculum includes the coastal rowing again or not, or if it's going to be a consideration this year or just at HP.
Casey, we're working with Dan Garbett on introducing coastal rowing to the junior population in other ways as well. So there'll be more information. Dan's in charge of that department. How he wants to do that is up to him. So there'll be an announcement if and when he gives us that information.
Great. And the makeup day. So the racing is scheduled to happen on Tuesday, practice Monday, scheduled racing on Tuesday. If it is, the fairness committee or the officials say that it is unsafe to execute the trials on Tuesday, we'll have a makeup day on Wednesday. That's what we plan for, a little bit of a contingency there. And I believe there's another trials that'll be happening all the way through Friday. So even though we want to, yeah, exactly, no bad weather in Sarasota ever. But if there is an emergency, like I know the selection procedures, we're going to make sure that people get the opportunity to race. We're going to work very hard towards that. So if bad weather happens on Wednesday too, we'll see. But we're trying to get people to execute their race, get done, and then they can get home and train, come out to Chula Vista and train, or also accept an invite out to camp to be selected for a team boat. If there are no further questions, I think that was a good night. I feel like it was pretty good questions. And again, don't feel like this is the only opportunity you have to ask questions. You can always send emails. I think some of our emails contain our phone numbers. So if you need a call, then please call. And again, trying to leave all the doors open. So if you have any questions, feel free.